Hey, good morning, Capital. How are you guys? Yeah? How was your Thanksgiving? That does not sound excellent. Did you guys get to see family? Maybe some of you are like, I get to see family and I wish I did not see family, but I'll put a smile on my face. And I love Thanksgiving. It's a day off, one. Those are beautiful things, right? Right? And it's just a great time to spend that I get to spend with my kids and my family, and I always love them. Well, hey, my name is Jacob. I am the student ministries pastor here at Capital. If I have not met you yet, it is nice to meet you. Okay, nice to meet you. All right, so I didn't do this last service, but I just had this genius idea. Can you guys all just tell me your names on the count of 3? So I've met all of you, okay? All right, so my name is Jacob. Your name is 1, 2, 3? David. Perfect. I will not remember any of those names. Sorry about that. Well, hey, I love being a dad. All right, I love it. And it's just a lot of fun, and I got a lot of those great lessons of how to be a dad from my dad. And but there's one lesson that my dad taught me that I still struggle with a bit. And when I was a kid, my dad would take one of those small Walmart balls, and he would take it and he would just throw it up in the air really high. And I just, as a kid, thought it was the coolest and greatest thing ever. Okay? It was like, the my dad could beat up your dad's story. My dad could throw a ball and it would disappear. So he would take that ball and he would throw it up and he'd catch it. And it's like, wow, that was so high, Dad. He'd get it again, throw it up even higher. Oh, man. And then he'd get that ball and launch it. And it'd be so high in the sky, I could not see where it went. I could not see it. It just disappeared for like a whole minute. And then the ball always ended up falling right behind me. And oh man, that was just exciting. And I would tell all my friends about this, and it was a big deal. And I would tell people about this all the way up in high school. When my dad told me a very unfortunate truth. The whole time, he was tricking me. He would take that ball one time, catch it. Second time, catch it. Third time, he would act like he threw it. So, of course, I looked up and thought that ball was there. That's why I had so much hang time. In that one moment, you feel like the dog, you play fetch with, and you think it's really funny when you're like, hee, 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 and you fake it, and the dog runs off and is like. That's what I felt like in that moment. I just felt like, man, and I just remember telling my dad, I wish you had not told me that. Because in that one moment, something that I believed, something that was innocent and good and wholesome and just a way to just be happy, crushed. Life does that though to us, doesn't it? Takes something good, wholesome, healthy, good, and then in a split second, it's destroyed. Divorce in a split second ruins your happily ever after. A sickness in the family can completely ruin that. A situation of abuse or something like that can ruin how you perceive church and your church leadership. And so, sometimes just some kind of drama or situation can make you even look and ruin holidays for you. Life has this way of taking good, wholesome, good things and breaking it, changing it, scarring it, and twisting it. And if we're not careful, life can do the exact same thing with our relationship with Jesus. And we're going to be in Luke chapter 1 today, and we're going to be looking at 2 individuals, one by the name of Mary and one by the name of Zachariah, from 2 different walks of life that were given a blessing, a situation that would change their life, and how each one of them took that blessing, and one of them took a good thing from God, twisted it and made it into something bad, and someone else took a good thing from the Lord, took it and actually celebrated it as a blessing. And I think we'll be able to look at these two people, and there's one really, really, really important lesson that I want us to learn here today. And that is how you believe determines how you will receive the blessings of God. How you believe determines how you will receive the blessings of God. And we're just going to jump right into our story here in Luke chapter 1, and we're in verse 5. It says, in the days of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah of the division of Abijah, and he had a wife from the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. And they were both righteous before God, walking blamelessly in all the commandments and statutes of the Lord, but they had no child because Elizabeth was barren, and both were advanced in years. So Zechariah was a priest. Now, in modern times, that would be like a pastor. But back then, they would do their worship and stuff in one building, in one city, in one specific location. And they had a long set of rituals and things they had to do, et cetera. And so they had this, I don't say an army of priests, but they had a lot of priests that had all sorts of roles. And so Zechariah was one of these. He was a pastor, he was a priest of Israel, and he had this set of responsibilities. And not only that, as I read, you saw that he had a wife from the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. So not only was this a priest, but his priestly line and his family had a lot of connections as well. Elizabeth had a long history of priestly family, and so did he. So there's this long line of well-established, they know what they're doing. This has been in their family for generations and ages. This is it. Now, what they also said, I thought was really neat, is he says, and they were both righteous before God, walking blamelessly in all the commandments and statutes of the Lord. Now, this is important because that last line I said was because Elizabeth was barren. And back in those times when you were barren, people would think, oh, you must have sinned. There must have been something there. You must have done something in the past, or your family must have done something to make you go barren. But as we see there, they had a long family line, long, healthy family line of priests, and they were both righteous before God. Both of them walked blamelessly in all the commandments and statutes of the Lord. But they had no child. They were both advanced in years. So at this stage, that phrase there says, hey, they had no kids and there was no chance. It wasn't like they were in their 20s and they just didn't have kids yet. Humanly speaking, there was no chance they were going to have kids. They were now old. They were advanced in years. So Zechariah was doing his priestly duty. He was burning incense in the temple. Now, this is what I think is funny. So I just imagine, I'm not going to die on this, but I think angels have a lot of fun scaring people. In almost every interaction that an angel has with a person, do not be afraid. Oh, well, that makes me not afraid at all. So here is Zechariah doing his priestly thing. He's burning incense in the temple. So he's there. He might be by himself, just doing his thing. This is his turn. This is his rotation to do it, which is actually a really big deal because you only got like a few weeks because they had so many priests in this one building. It's like, hey, this is Zechariah's turn. And they actually had to draw lots, okay? Let's just say draw straws over who was going to get this responsibility. So it'd be very similar to here I am teaching today. And it'd be like, Pastor Dave is like, hey, I'm going to be gone this week, so you other pastors draw straws and figure out who's speaking. Oh, man, it's me. Okay? But for me, I'm like, yes, okay? This is great. I can't wait to do this. So this is it. So Zechariah's like, yes, I got the straw. He's doing his thing. And here he is, and he's burning incense. Now, I'm not going to die on this, but I think Gabriel did one of these. Don't be scared. Poor old man's going to have a heart attack right there, burning incense. But Gabriel says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. For your prayer has been heard. And your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you shall call his name John. Verse 14, and you will have joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth, for he will be great before the Lord. Now I want you to imagine as a parent getting this news about your kid. Just think about it. You'll have a son. And your son's name is this. So now you and your family don't have to fight over what do you want to name him? Okay? You don't. God's like, I'm giving you the name. But not only that, your kid will be great before the Lord. All right. That's good, because I know some of you are looking at your kids. I needed that, God. Because I was starting to question. Have you seen this kid? Okay. But now they don't even have to wonder. This kid, you win. It's a success. You got this. And as a parent, what would you be? Excited? If you were told that your kid was going to be godly and great before God, would that make you excited? Yes. I didn't really believe this part of the congregation here. Would that make you excited? Yes. Okay, my kid's going to be godly and great. Yeah. I did that. I don't want to brag or anything. No, I mean, this is big news. This is great. So that's what you expect Zechariah to do, be excited and happy. And this is, oh man, my kid's going to be great before God. Good. And I haven't even met the kids yet. This is even better. But I thought this was fascinating. It says, do not be afraid, Zechariah, for your prayer has been heard. Now remember, Zechariah was what? Advanced in years, which means what? He was old. So old is anybody older than I am? It's most of you, okay? I have no idea. But he was old. So when was this prayer? Now, you know how in life where you're praying for something, and you just really haven't heard anything for a while? And after a while, you're like, okay, I think I got my answer. The answer is probably no. It just sort of happens over the course of life, and you're not mad about it. It is. It's just the reality. So I think this prayer Zechariah had, it's not something recent, especially with how we see he will respond here in a minute. I think this is a prayer in the past. So Zechariah prayed this prayer, and he had this thing, and it was in the past. And over the course of time, they got older and older and older. It's like, okay, I think we got our answer. We're just not supposed to have kids, and you change and adjust, and you live your life a little bit different, you know? Like you just become that great auntie and uncle, you know? You just become that family, and it's an okay thing. You might be bummed, but you've moved on. You moved into a new stage of acceptance in life. And so this is what's fascinating is Gabriel's like, your prayer in the past has been answered now when you're old. And you're like, that's like a whole sermon we could preach for another day. Like we put time limits on God in prayer. But that's for a new week, another time, okay? All right, anyways, we'll keep going. So we just expect, so this is Zechariah, man, your prayer's been answered. This is good. This is great. You're going to have a godly kid, and that means your wife, because childbearing is no joke. Back in the day, you had nowhere near the medical support you do now. So now it's like, hey, your wife's going to make it. You're going to have a healthy kid, and your kid is going to live past the critical time that children struggled with back in the time. You get sick, man. Wow! And you expect Zechariah to be happy. Now remember, how you believe determines how you receive God's blessings. And this is how you responded. In Luke chapter 1, verse 18, how shall I know this? For I am an old man, and my wife is advanced in years. Gabriel, prove it. I'm old. My wife is old. Prove it. How shall I know this? You tell me this, but I'm old and my wife is old, and I won't believe it. I won't believe it without proof. Zechariah's belief required proof. He needed to have proof of it before he decided to believe it. And so what happens is he took a blessing from God and chose to receive it with doubt. And now God's blessing was no longer a blessing, but actually became a curse and a problem and something God had to jump through some hoops for to make it good and look good. And we'll see what the consequences of that doubt became. But Zechariah took a blessing, twisted it, and made it into something bad. Can you empathize, though, with this a little bit? I know, I can. I mean, sometimes I come into Scripture and I'm reading it and I'm like, okay, here's Zechariah. He's a priest. That'd be like a pastor. And he struggles with doubt. I'm like, oh, that's me sometimes. I know I have let the blessings of God become a curse at times. And so we can take something good and make it into something bad. We know that God is supposed to, work all things for good to those who love God. But everywhere I look, I see bad. And I'm not seeing it, God. And God, you have to prove this to me before I believe it. I know you say in Psalm 23 that goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. But I'm looking back and all I'm seeing is debt and challenges and financial times. I'm not seeing goodness and mercy. And I won't believe it until you prove it to me. And we take good stuff and we now try to make God work through hoops in order to make it more true and more believable. And we end up missing out some great, we're just not missing out. And so Zechariah here, he says, Gabriel, prove it to me because I'm old. And Gabriel's response is swift and it is serious. He says in verse 19, I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God. I was sent to speak to you and to bring you this good news. And behold, you will be silent, unable to speak until the day that these things take place, because you did not believe my words, which will be fulfilled in their time. Gabriel's like, I stand in the presence of God. I am as much proof as you need. This would be very similar to the postmaster general going and delivering a letter to your house. You can't get any more receiving lettery than that. You can't. He's like, here, I wanted you to have this. Sir, this is a bill. Could you take this back? Nope. You should individually have this. Thank you, kind sir. This is Gabriel. He's as close as you can be, gets a message from God, goes and delivers it. And he's prove it. This isn't good enough. I'm not going to believe this. And so Gabriel's like, you are unable to speak now, though. Because instead of you taking this great news and running out of the temple, saying, guess what? I'm going to have a baby. An angel just visited me. This is going to be great. This is amazing. I'm going to have one. I prayed for one forever ago. And it's, and everyone's like, maybe. And he's like, oh no, it's going to happen. Gonna have a baby. And sure enough, he was going to have it. And if you think about it, I mean, it starts becoming obvious at 3-4 months. I mean, he waited years. What was a few more months? But that's what her doubt does. That's what her doubt does. And so Gabriel's like, you're now no longer going to speak because what you're going to say, you're taking a blessing of God and you're actually making it into something negative and bad. And you've twisted it. So now you can't speak. And now instead of actually being a blessing to others and a blessing to your wife, you're actually now a hindrance and a problem. Because now your wife, who is old, is going through childbirth. Childbirth is hard enough when you're young. Imagine childbirth when you're older. Imagine it, ladies. All right? Yeah, I have arthritis. That'd be a nightmare. Okay? You kidding me? There's no way. That's nuts. Now he can't even speak. So now she's going to need something, and she won't be able to speak, right? Because she's dealing with everything. It's like, do you want a glass of water? Now he's just become a problem. So he took God's blessings and made it something bad. So his belief required proof. And when we take that mentality, we end up twisting things and just make it harder on ourselves and honestly others. But we're not done yet. So remember, how you believe determines how you receive the blessings of God. So Luke 1:26, now we're moving on to our second person. In the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God to a city of Galilee named Nazareth, to a virgin betrothed to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David, and the virgin's name was Mary. I think this is neat. There's no mention of this giant family lineage and line. No mention of this great historical line. There's no mention of her walking blamelessly before the Lord. The only thing you get is this is a young lady who's engaged, betrothed to be married to a guy. That's it. That's it. That's Mary. And Gabriel shows up. Surprise. Verse 30. Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. Now I want you to catch this. I want you to imagine you're hearing this for the first time. You haven't heard it a bazillion times at a Christmas story, because I know we have. But you're going to go through the list. If this is the first time you're hearing it. For you have found favor with God. Well, that's an interesting introduction. Okay. And you will conceive in your womb and bear a son. What? And you shall call his name Jesus. Hold up. Can we go back to that first, that's the one you just said? He will be great and will be called Son of the Most High. Hold on. I haven't caught up with this one yet. Okay? And the Lord God will give to him the throne of his father David. Wait. What? And he will reign over the house of Jacob forever. Forever's a long time. Okay? And of his kingdom there will be no end. Could we go back to that second part that I'm having a kid? Because that's a lot that Gabriel just, right there. See, Zechariah was getting his prayer answered. Zechariah was in the best place and the best position to receive a blessing and answered prayer from God. He has a healthy relationship. They were both reputable in the community and with each other. They were blameless. They were good. They had jobs, etc. And they took that blessing and he took that blessing and made something bad. Here's Mary. Mary is a young lady whose only thought is, I'm about to get married. And they were arranged marriages back then. We don't even know how well she knew him. Do you think any of this crossed her mind? Her prayer, dear Lord, I want to have a virgin birth and carry the Son of God, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. I would like to completely uproot and destroy what I know in life. And Herod's going to try to kill the kid, and that's a whole thing. But I want society to look at me as, as this bad girl. And I want to be cast out by my family and rejected by my fiance. Amen. No, there's no way. Her prayer was, God, I don't even know if I like this guy. I barely know him. I'm getting married to him. He sort of smells when he comes in from the field. This is hard. This is tough. She had every human reason to say, God, stop. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this. I didn't need this. No. I'm not your girl. I'm not. Slow down. But instead, she does something else. And if we take these things that Mary does to heart, it will transform how you view and how you live and how you see life. It will transform how you see the blessings of God. It will transform how you walk in your relationship with Jesus. And it actually transforms and changes how you see problems and blessings. Because Mary had every reason to say no. Stop. But this is what she does. Mary believed immediately. Luke 1:34. And Mary said to the angel, how will this be since I am a virgin? And there's 2 points stuck in this verse, all right? So we're going to break down the first one. One is her statement, how will this be? This isn't a statement of prove it. This is a statement of clarification. You say this, I'm taking this as it is going to happen. Can you please explain it to me? See, her belief is instantaneous. Gabriel comes, shows up, gives the message of the century. Okay, I'm about to throw you, Mary, into the greatest story ever told. And she's like, okay, I believe immediately. Yes, I'd like a little more clarification on this, but I believe immediately. See, God says that all things work together for good. And if God says it, it will be. If God says that goodness and mercy will follow you all the days of your life, it will be. If God says he's going to do a great and mighty work in you and through you, guess what? It will be. When God speaks, it will be. And we just have to believe immediately. Just immediately. Without all the details, without all the information, I believe. Now, I like what happens next, what we're going to see next, because sometimes I think we take this belief and we try not to put any human interaction with it, and we just sort of like stop. We're like, God, I pray that you will heal me of my addiction that I've been stuck in for the last 25 years. And we just expect a ray of heaven. Whoa! I am now healed and I have no more addiction. God's like, okay, I said I'm going to do that. I need you to move a little bit for me, please. Okay? And I think this is why what happens next is Mary, when she asked here in the same verse where Mary believed inquisitively, asked questions. Because what it says is Mary said to the angel, how will this be? She took it as belief. But in her mind, she's like, okay, in health class, I learned it takes two to do one. And I'm just one. There's no two. So, could you help me out here? That's a valid request. It is. Okay, how? Help me out here. And Gabriel clarifies it really well. I mean, just really makes it as clear as mud how this works. 35. And the angel answered her, the Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. Therefore, the child to be born will be called Holy, the Son of God. Oh. Well, that answers it. Okay. And sometimes God won't be as clear. I mean, could you imagine God trying to explain that whole process? Just trust me here. It's just going to work. It's going to happen. And I find in life that when God speaks or God reveals things to us as God works and moves in our life, he does so in two different ways. He does to what is called what I see as sort of like this general idea, this general revelation, this general leading, and then he does it specifically. General is a very broad, across the spectrum, all people. So like all things work together for good to those who love God. That's a lot of people. Okay, that's just this giant thing. And then specific is you as an individual. So in times like this, in times of general, how do we ask God to make this clear? Because we're reading, okay, all things work together for good. Or we're a husband and we're like, well, how should I love my wife? She's sort of annoying and I'm struggling right now. How do I do this? And so we have this general thing. And generally God is like, hey, just turn the page. So a lot of times we stop right there, but God's explained how we're supposed to love somebody else, especially our wife. Oh, like Jesus did. Oh, he died for her. Okay, that answers it. Thank you. So God reveals this general thing, generally through his word. You just got to keep turning the page and keep reading. The answers are there. But sometimes in life, he leads it very specifically. Like with Mary, this XYZ, you're doing this, and that, everything else. But for you individually, he might have given you a desire, a specific, unique desire that you, based on your talents, your place in life, your experiences, all these things, and now you're like, hey, I know I'm supposed to work with children. But if we think about it, it's a lot of different things. Am I supposed to be a daycare worker, school bus driver? Am I supposed to be a teacher? Am I supposed to be a counselor? Am I supposed to be an emergency room for children's hospital person? I don't really know. And so we're going through like, I'm going to do that. Work with kids, emergency room. And in specific times, it's really hard to turn the page because it's very unique to us. And so God brings mentors and guidance and friends and people and experiences and situations where we're able to process those specific things out. And we find out our friend is like, hey, I don't think you should go into an emergency room. And we're like, why? Well, remember that time I got a paper cut last year and you passed out? Blood might not be your thing. Oh, yeah. Okay. And it helps narrow that down for us. And that's when we have this sort of specific leading and specific guidance and this sort of specific promise that's really hard to sort of quantify. We're trying to work through that. Sometimes we need friends and mentors to come alongside. So it's good to recognize that this is a general thing where I can generally just keep turning the page. The answer's there. Or, hey, this is something I need to ask a friend, ask a pastor, ask a mentor, ask a family member, a mom or dad or whoever happens to be. We can get some specific guidance. Mary's was very specific. Mary, you will carry the King of Kings. There's nobody else in the room named Mary. Okay. So she asks inquisitively, how does this look? Can you give me a little more information? Can you give me some more detail? And what's really fun is that in verse 36 and 37, it says, behold, Gabriel actually gives a little more information. Behold, your relative Elizabeth in her old age has also conceived a son. And this is the 6th month with her who was called barren, for nothing will be impossible with God. Mary did not ask for any proof. Nothing. And Gabriel is gracious and actually gives her a little bit of proof. You're wondering if this is possible? Hey, your relative, Elizabeth, who is old, has conceived and is bearing a son. It's actually 6 months in. Nothing is impossible with God. And so he gave Mary, because of her faith, actually some proof. You're wondering if it'll work with you? Yes, because we made something similar happen into someone else. And this is what happens, I think, when we live in our life, when we surround ourselves with other people. We're like, man, I'm really struggling with this car problem, or this situation here, or this story here, or my family here, or school here, whatever it is. And there's people around you like, hey, I had something happen in my life. This is how God worked in my own life. And we're like, yes. That's proof that God is on the move and he is working, and this is a good thing, and so it helps. And that's what Gabriel gives to Mary. I did the impossible in Elizabeth. I can do the impossible with you. And lastly, verse 38. And I think this is so neat. And it was so neat, I made up a word. Impressionally is not a word. It's not. I made it up. It's like impressionably or something. And I'm like, no one wants a bunch of words. So I was like, we're making up a word. Impressionally. And it matches my eyes and my other points. And when you're a preacher, you gotta make sure, it matches eyes. Okay? You got it. So this is what she says. And Mary said, behold, I am a servant of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word. I really like Christmas time because at Christmas time, I get to have sugar cookies. Who's with me? Okay. We're going to speak. Okay. Some of you are like, I don't like sugar cookies. Whatever. But the fun part about sugar cookies is when you take the cookie cutter, you get to make Christmas trees. You take it out, and you put the impression into the cookie dough, you cut it out, you take it out and you cook it, and then you get to put too much frosting on it. Cookie, frosting. Perfect, like a pyramid. This is good. This is why my wife doesn't let me have a lot of cookies, because it's just a lot of frosting. But what Mary's saying here is, God, make me your sugar cookie. Imprint on me according to your word. I want to be shaped. What a statement of faith. See, she believed immediately. She asked some questions about it just to wrap her mind around it, and then was like, I'm all yours, God. Shape me, let it be to me according to your word. Shape me, God, however you see fit. I believe. See, she took something that had a potential of being a curse for this poor girl who had an unstable family situation, and it's about to get a whole lot crazier. And she took that life situation and made it into something amazing. There was at the end of Ranch, or like right before Ranch, a few months ago, someone ran into my car. And he was advanced in age. You guys are going to say that to each other. You're advanced in age. It wasn't even hard. Boop. My car just goes. His car was fine. And my car was totaled. Boom, done. Now, some of you are like, I've had that happen all the time. That's no big deal. But for me, it was symbolic in a way. Because for the last 12 years, I had been given cars by people who just said, hey, I don't know how long this car will last. Here, I know you need a car. And so I would drive these cars that were only supposed to last a year, and I would make them last 3 or 4 years. And this thing hit, and you're thinking, man, it's totaled, and now you got a car payment. How are you going to do this? You got all this stuff went through. But I was like, man, I've done 12 years of this now. So here's this life situation, this problem. I don't have the money for this. I was like, God's been doing it for 12 years. Who am I to question it's going to happen again? So I waited and waited and waited for a car. I even prayed with my kids. Hey, God's been doing really cool things 12 years. Let's just see what happens. And I even had other people looking for a free car for me because they're like, we can't stop that. We can't. Let's this thing go. Let's just keep this going. But we looked and looked and looked for weeks and nothing was happening. So I sort of wrestled around a little bit with it, maybe. And so I was praying, and I do this prayer walk around my block. And as I was praying and thinking and going through, there's the story of Joshua that came to mind. Now, if you haven't read the story of Joshua, you should read it. It's in the Old Testament. But Joshua led an army into the promised land. And at the beginning of those battles, he actually had God fighting in a significant way for them. Joshua in the Battle of Jericho, all sorts of things that were completely miraculous in nature. But over the course of time, how God worked and how God moved got sort of like quieter and quieter, less and less and less. God wasn't doing as many miracles because Joshua's army had gotten trained and ready to a point where they could fight their own battle. And that story came into my mind. And this idea came to my mind as like, God's like, I've been doing this for 12 years for you. You can do it now. You can take it now. You're in a place where you can take this now. And I had to ask some clarifying questions and think through it and run through it. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. And I had full peace about it. And I go and I find a car. I buy this car. And they do the general maintenance checks and stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, we got to fix the AC or whatever. Okay, sweet, good. All right, so I get the car. First day I get it back, the transmission drops. Did I miss something, God? That's not how this is supposed to go. But, God's been, like I said, 12 years is a long time. I believe that's what it was. So I go and I call them and I said, hey, transmission? They're like, wait, what, really? Yeah, how did this pass the maintenance check? So they go and they take it. They get back to me a week later and they're like, yeah, it's the transmission. We're going to replace and buy you a new one. So I have a used car that I bought, the brand spanking new transmission in there. All because I just sat and waited. And I had a choice. Do I take this problem as an opportunity for God to move and a blessing? Or do I make this as a curse? Do I go around, oh, somebody ran into my car again. Oh, God hates me. He must not want me to get to work. I'm not gonna be able to work in the teens with anymore because I'm not gonna be able to drive. And I could have made it this giant story about how my life is hard. Or I could take it as we'll see what happens. And I decided to do that based on what God had kept doing. I took that as a blessing instead of a curse. And when we take God working and we believe it immediately, we can ask some clarifying questions inquisitively, and when we're at the end, like, God, I am just your servant. Do to me according to your word. Man, the bad stuff in life takes a whole new twist, takes a whole new meaning because we let God be God. And when God says something, he will do it. We just have to believe it. So I want to challenge us with that for this holiday season because it can be tough on us. I know some of you are going through some really hard things right now. And I'm just asking you, just believe. Get some clarity, partner with someone wise. And then at the end of the day, God, I'm yours. I'm yours. Do with me according to your word. Let God do his thing because he won't let you down. I invite you to stand with me, invite the prayer team forward. And if there's someone here today who would like some extra prayer, maybe they are struggling with this matter of faith or something in their life, we'd love to pray, love to partner with you. Can I pray for you? Let's pray. God, we just lift our hands to you and praise you and thank you for your goodness and your grace. You worked in the lives of Zechariah and Mary in a very special, incredible way. May our faith be just like Mary. May we believe your goodness and rest and believe immediately. God, help us to go to the right people to seek clarity on some of the ways you're leading us specifically. And at the end of the day, no matter what happens, we offer ourselves up to you. Shape us according to your word. We give you the glory. In Jesus' name, amen.